What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another technical analysis where I like to dive into my entries and exits on stocks that I'm looking at for the week. If that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as I do also provide a weekly update, which gives you up to date information on current events, as well as I do provide a daily pulse on the market at Hemi137 on X as well. So let's go ahead and dive right into what we're looking at this week. We've started to have some pretty big selling going into this week. Again, there's a lot going on. I expect a lot more big information coming over the next couple of weeks into inauguration. So we can anticipate that. I'm expecting a lot of roadblocks to be pulled out, stops to be pulled out. Given again that this market has been on one heck of a rally, one of the largest ones in history to actually occur since we have paused back in October of last year. So, with that being said, looking at what we got this week, one thing that we've noticed is we are currently at support. So, all the chop that we've essentially had going into the election has kind of built a very what was resistance is now support. So this is the first time attempting to uh, hit that what is now support level, which was resistance before. So this week will be interesting to see. We are coming into the back half of the year, expecting some people to do some tax loss harvesting. Was a big options expiration date as well on Friday. So we will see if the market recovers back and at least tries to go back to that 6K mark this week. But ultimately, if we do lose footing here, again, our next level, we are strongly looking at that 57.44. And then again, I think we will make one last trip to try to tag the top of this channel by the end of the year. The 6,200 is a strong possibility, but ultimately, again, we want to only keep it within the ranges. Looking forward to, like I said, bounce here. We'll see if it fills this gap. If it fills the gap's coming back down, that would start challenging having a higher low at that point. So the way we open up this week will be extremely important. If we do start selling off, again, looking for some major support here, roughly around the 5,600, and then we'll go from there. But again, like I've stated before, I think what's going to happen by the end of the year, because you are bailing out a lot of banks, there's a lot of quantitative easing on the backside. I think eventually you will challenge this level, and like I've talked about, pricing in a recession is something that we have not done yet, which is on average about 42%. So I've kind of cleared this up a little bit because it was getting pretty chaotic, which you have to do every so often. But about a 42% correction, that's just on average. Essentially, it puts you close to that bottom zone. So roughly around that 40, say 3,500 would probably be. So this bottom zone right here, where the market could potentially drop on average. Again, we are dealing with a lot of historical data at this point, so you have to understand that as well, as far as the manipulation stuff that's been going on. And with the dollar being so strong is not actually a very good sign. That means the rest of the world is crumbling, which again, you have to understand that with the trade and everything and this the sync of everything that occurs around the world, that is going to be actually very detrimental. So that's one thing you do not want. So we'll continue to watch and see how this plays out. But as of right now, you are on support. So we'll see how the remainder of the week plays out here. Now, Bitcoin's been extremely strong over the past couple days, essentially since the elections occurred. Again, very pro crypto with a new administration. Now you're pretty much in price discovery mode. Again, you have to really be based off of psychological numbers at this point because you are in price discovery mode. We'll see right now. The market's actually, I think, floating around 90 right now. I think it's 97. I think it's actually pulled back since then. But again, at this point, with even crypto, a lot of these are starting to get very, very overextended. You have to remember back in October of last year, that was your bottom roughly around the 1400, and the massive move you've already had to this point. To think that this thing is going to just continue to run up, it's already a 453% rally, which is crazy in itself. So to think that this thing's just going to continue to ride up is, I think you're pressing your luck to be able to get in. Although there was a lot of consolidation here, I wouldn't be surprised if we attempt to try to break over 100K. But I think what more than likely is going to happen is you're going to get a wick if it doesn't occur already. Again, you're looking at a weekly here. We'll see how we open up this week. Typically, you'll get some sort of little bit of a dip. But if that can't recover the week after that, you are getting into a low volume period as well. So that's something to keep in mind because you are getting the holidays. We'll see if we can recover from this or not. But ultimately, yeah, it's looking interesting. Crypto is obviously a very good play over the past year. There's been a couple of stocks that have been doing extremely well. But again, I have to understand that's already a 480, what was it, 450 percent change already. So we want to take profits when they're actually pushing up and not actually continuing to try to buy in here at the top. Now the cycle with crypto is you have to understand it goes essentially your Bitcoin and then it rolls into a lot of your smaller coins and then your meme coins after the fact. So there might be some bigger rip in those the smaller coins, but I think as far as Bitcoin is concerned, that challenge is going to be that 100K. And you have to understand the first time anything is attempted to try to break a large psychological number like that, it will get rejected pretty hard. Again, typically you have to understand where we've come from. That's a massive run already. Again, I don't like continue to try to press limits because you have to take that into account. Once you realize that you've had a massive bull run, you take your profits and then you cycle in and wait for the next drop. Now, the next drop, again, I think you are going into very much a hyperinflation type scenario moving forward. But I think, again, a lot of stuff's going to be released here in January once the new administration takes over. What that's going to look like, you have to correct all essentially the massive spending because you're going to have to dial back on the spending, which is going to, I think, be quite crazy just for the market in itself. So, and then Tesla, just like Bitcoin, has gone absolutely berserk since the election is finished and the new administration has been selected. We'll see if this does come back. I think this will correct back down. Again, it's a hard ceiling here, roughly at the 365. It is currently holding support here at the 310, expecting it to, once the market starts correcting, I don't know how much further below 300. You had a lot of chances to buy down here for a longer term swing. Now, in my opinion, I think you'd be lucky if you get it below 300. I think like 250 would probably be the more reasonable, especially even if the market starts correcting or crashing at that point. I think 250 is probably you're close to bottom here. Maybe here there's been a lot of support here around that 220 as well. I think at that point you'd be lucky enough to get 220 at this point, but we'll see what happens. But Tesla's one of the ones I really like. The company itself, I think, again, you have to really focus on what's going on with the company if you're going to look to buy in. Again, this is another massive stock that's had some crazy momentum. I mean, it's gone up over 745% already this year. If you were lucky enough to buy down here, we were calling it here roughly around the 750 mark is when I started really talking about it again. I've captured some of these plays up. Obviously, it continues to still rip up from this point. Will be some sort of correction. I think we'll be lucky if you can get it around like 40 or 30 at this point. But ultimately, as of right now, again, it's continuing to get good news and continuing to pump it. But we'll continue to watch. Again, another great one to watch. Amazon is another fantastic one to watch as well. But it does need to correct. Again, much like everything else, it's very overextended. Did have a slight dip here down to the 150. I think you could potentially see this down to 127. Again, Amazon sells off pretty heavy, and Bezos has been selling quite a bit lately. So we'll see how this does play out. But right now, you're kind of topping the 208, and anytime you push above it, it keeps wicking back down. So, but we're very close to start getting in a price discovery mode with this. I think that's all-time high right now with yeah, you're at all-time highs. So you're in price discovery mode already. So we'll see what happens with Amazon. But again, I think you're getting very top heavy, so you got to be very careful about taking position, even though it's kind of just up everything at this point. You still want to wait for some sort of pullback, however long that may take. SoFi has had a monster run. I've been talking about it since around these levels, around the 6 to 7, 650 to 7. Now it's actually gone parabolic. It does look like you're getting a bullish bull flag here. We'll see if this thing continues to rip up. If this does correct, maybe you might see maybe around a 10. As far as like lows, it really depends on the sentiment on the market. So continue to watch to see how that plays out. But as of right now, it's definitely building some momentum up here. See if we can do a retest the 12. But again, everything's just absolutely just parabolic at this point. Elf is another one I've been talking about for quite a while. It was consolidating a lot down here between the 102 mark and the 113 mark. It is retesting the 113. As long as it can hold the 113, we may start building our way back up. So like Elf is another one that I'm really watching closely for the future. Celsius, it's lost some support here at the 218. I've talked about this before. I think this thing could potentially run down to the $15 mark. We'll see how well it holds here. It's kind of in a dead man zone here till it drops down to the 17. There's solid support here. So I'm not expecting it to go any lower than that. Anything is possible. But as of right now, I think it will hold and start turning. Once the market starts to turn around, I think this will be another big game changer as well. But again, everything I think is starting to price in a recession aside from some of the big tech right now. So just kind of watching that closely. But again, you need to retrace and get back over this essentially $30 mark to really start gaining momentum back to the upside. So watching that one there. AMD is one I really like moving forward. As far as the chip play, I do really like the CEO. I like what they're doing. I think they can start taking some of the market share from NVIDIA. Although right now NVIDIA may be getting some bad information here new, especially if they're looking for security fraud immunity. That could be some big news, which may sell everything off pretty heavy. Looking for some sort of event coming up here shortly. But nonetheless, it's currently supported here at the 130. I think this thing could easily dive down to close to that 110 mark, potentially even just under the $100 mark. But it's got some great momentum moving forward. I think in the future, again, I think it will take part of that market share eventually at some point, but we'll have to wait and see. So, but again, let's see if we can hold this zone between the 130 to the 184. If it does start recovering, potentially up to the 168. So that's one I do want to keep on the board as well. Let's see. Snow is one I like. They have earnings this week. We'll see how well they do. Would really like it in this range here if we could get back down to the 112. But it's essentially one of the most secure cloud solutions out there. So this is kind of really what I'm looking at here. I think this thing could be very positive. They're partnering with a lot of these major companies. So I look to see how they do well here. But ideally, the zone here on the 109 is fantastic. This has dropped a little bit lower than anticipated here. But it's kind of back in that major buy range here, especially because you could potentially recover up to the 184 mark. Potentially, it's been a very hard sailing here at the 234. Obviously, since IPO, this thing hasn't been doing so great. It was really hyped back in the day, but again, I think you're getting more normalized numbers here moving forward. We're watching that as well, and then let's bring up some of the usual suspects. BA BA again continuing to looks like it's breaking downwards out of this ascending wedge. This is what I've been talking about for a while. Any kind of these wedges haven't been accurate. So this is why I use supply and demand works a lot better. The market's been really choppy in general, but this is a weekly chart, so we'll see if this can recover back into the 147 mark here. Typically, this may even dive down to the 122 mark. It has had such bad news left and right. I'm surprised it's even holding at the 140 right now, but if it does break down here, it may actually reverse this thing and start climbing back up, because it is supported by the government. So just keep that in mind. But moving forward may not be with the new administration, so we might get more bad news for BA. So just keep that in mind. But as of right now, it is starting to break out of this wedge to the downside. We'll see if it can push up and retest the 144. If it can't reclaim that and starts reversing and continuing to sell off, that's definitely a bad sign. I'll be looking at the 124 if that's the case. Moving forward, JPM, as usual, it's price discovery mode. So every $5 mark, it's pressing 6 points this week. Again, if you've followed my channel at all, typically about 4 points is the average. So if it moves a point, is big. If it moves 2 points, it's even really big. So we do have NVIDIA earnings, which could put a lot of weight on this market. If they, for some reason, do bad or get caught for security fraud, something like that, this thing could really start turning over. And again, much like in October of last year, it's just been going up ever since. So it's just up mode since then. So things you need to keep in mind. But like I've said, we'll look to do some sort of retest down to 225. It needs to fill this gap and retest if you want a strong bull. Otherwise, yeah, if it does break this and fall back into this range, it's not a good sign. So, but not making this video too long. Like I said, a lot of stuff is very overextended, so you're really just kind of gathering your list and being patient and waiting to see what happens. Like I said, the market needs to see if it can recover this week. Again, it's heavily weighted on what happens with NVIDIA. If NVIDIA does bad, that could definitely bring a lot of sell pressure, as that is essentially what's been holding up the market between that and Meta. Again, Meta has also looked for security fraud immunity. So again, if there's any kind of fallout with that, that could definitely put a lot of sell pressure on the market in general. So, but with everything being said, if you made this far, go ahead and drop a like button, and I will see you on the next one.